Welcome on the pure wisdom ones. When God's chosen ones are removed, awaken your spirit. The world does not notice until it is too late. There's something unsettling about the quiet after a storm, not the type that brings relief. The sort in which you know the hurricanes was not the end, but rather a warning. Throughout history, civilizations, countries, and even individuals have prospered in the presence of those divinely appointed. Without recognizing it, people often mistake grace for coincidence, protection for luck, and heavenly warnings for background noise. And then one day, the selected are gone. Those who spoke the truth no one wanted to hear. Who had a presence. Nobody could explain who caused the disruptions that needed to be eliminated. Just like that. What was the result? A shift. A reckoning. No one saw the gap coming. If you believe this is only a metaphor, think again. Historically, the abrupt departure of prominent persons has signaled momentous events such as collapse, war, turmoil, and judgment. According to the Bible, when Lot fled Sodom, fire followed. When Jesus left the temple, destruction arrived. Even in contemporary times, society often recognizes the significance of some personalities after the harm is permanent. So, if you've been laughing at the selected, ignoring their words, or dismissing their warnings like junk emails, now is the time to pay heed. Because when God determines that your duty is complete and it's time to go, it's more than simply a departure. It's an event. And believe me, nobody likes what happens next. Number 1. You were never looking for comfort. You were here to collide. God's chosen ones do not have the luxury of fitting in. They do not go through life quietly, unnoticed, or unbothered. Their entire presence sparks conflict, not because they desire it, but because they bear something that challenges the established order. Their very presence compels individuals to choose between aligning with truth and resisting it from the time they enter a space. Things change. Years-old structures such as false narratives, generational cycles, and spiritual complacency begin to fracture. People get uncomfortable, often without realizing why. It is not about personality or charm. It is something deeper, a heavenly mandate that will not allow corruption to remain undetected. This is why God's chosen ones often face rejection, treachery, and opposition. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're doing precisely what they were assigned to do. They were not sent here to make amends with dysfunction. They were assigned to expose it. They were never asked to be liked. They were summoned to serve as a warning that darkness is not eternal. But here's the deal. Their time is short. They were never intended to remain in one spot indefinitely. When their purpose is complete, God eliminates them as a deliberate act. Some will notice their disappearance too late. Others will eventually realize that the exact thing they were resisting was the only thing keeping judgment at away. The chosen were not looking for comfort. They were here to crash with something that was never intended to last. And after their objective is accomplished, their departure is not a retreat. This is a statement. Number 2, your leaving is a divine plan, not a retreat. Leaving does not imply losing. It does not indicate failure, surrender, or unfinished business. When God removes his chosen ones, it is not because they lack the strength to remain. It's because their mere existence has already served its purpose. They were never asked to repair everything, merely to change the attitude. Once that's finished, their elimination is not just required. It is strategic. Some may regard their leaving as abandonment. Others may see this as evidence that they were not as strong as they appeared to be. That's the mistake everyone makes. They believe God's chosen ones are designed to bear the weight of everything endlessly, as if their strength, prayers, and sheer presence are what kept everything from collapsing. However, they were never intended to be more than a warning, a catalyst, or a temporary protection. Once they are gone, The implications of what was overlooked, disregarded, or fought against will be fully realized. People seldom realize the importance of someone's presence until it is gone. Things do not just return to normal once the selected have left. They unravel, not because the selected ones sought devastation, but because their departure demonstrates that grace is altered. God does not bring his people out for no cause. It's always a hint that things is going to change, and not in the manner most people expect, particularly those who believe they had more time. Those who believed they could continue resisting. Those who believed they were in charge. They're going to discover what happens when the ones who are holding back the storm are no longer in the way, because when God removes his chosen, he's not just shifting individuals. He's changing history. Number 3, your presence was a response to a crisis that no longer required you. God never puts his chosen ones at random. They are given to certain times, locations, and individuals for a specific purpose, whether it is a country, a city, a family, or even a single person. Their presence is a solution to a spiritual crisis that many people fail to acknowledge until it is too late. But here is the reality. They were never intended to remain. Their function was temporary. Their mission had a deadline, and their presence was a supernatural solution to an issue that could not be solved in any other manner. There is no need for individuals to stay after the issue has been addressed, whether by exposing it, moving it, or giving them one more opportunity to change. Most people get this incorrectly. They believe selected ones are only fixtures in their existence. Always. They're continually praying and bearing the weight. They take for granted the knowledge, protection, and cautions. Some people even oppose or detest them, believing that they will always be there. But one day, they're gone. There's no explanation. There was no wait, simply gone. That's when reality kicks in. Those who disregarded them begin to sense their absence. The serenity that had encompassed them was gone. Supernatural favor, gone. There is no longer any quiet protection. That's when they realize the selected ones were more than simply another voice, person, or presence. They were the reason why everything didn't come apart sooner. When God dismisses his chosen, it means their mission is accomplished. And for those who remain behind, this is hardly a relief. This is a warning, because the ones carrying the light are no longer present. Darkness does not just return. It takes over. Number 4, you were not sent to be adored. You were sent as a warning. People adore the concept of being chosen by God until they discover what it really entails. It does not imply acclaim, adoration, or approval. It entails venturing into areas where you are not welcome and stating things that others do not want to hear. It entails being described as tough, intense, or even hazardous. Not because you are incorrect, but because you refuse to remain quiet. History demonstrates it. Prophets were not celebrated. They were stoned, expelled, and killed. Even Jesus, the greatest of all, was not welcomed. He was betrayed, falsely accused, and crucified by the ones he came to save. Why should it be different for those he sends? God's chosen ones are not tasked with comforting others in their delusions. They are sent to demolish them, expose falsehoods, disrupt institutions, and warn the world that God is watching. But here's the issue. People like darkness more than light. They do not want to be woken. They like to be left alone. So when a chosen one moves forward wielding truth like a sword, opposition is unavoidable. The rejection is not personal. It is prophetic. The world has always resisted truth tellers. They insult, ignore, or attempt to eliminate them, believing that by silencing the messenger, they may also silence the message. But the reality persists, as does the penalty of ignoring it. So if you find yourself misunderstood, rejected, or even despised, don't be shocked. You weren't intended to win hearts. You were sent to warn them. Whether or not they listened is entirely up to them. But your objective was never to be adored. It was about ensuring they had no excuses when the time came. Number 5. The world will never change in the manner you had anticipated. Every selected one faces a hard reality. Not everyone will change, regardless of how much truth they hear. You may preach, warn, pray, and give all you have to them. However, some will never wake up, not because they don't comprehend, but because they refuse to. It's tempting to imagine that if you simply speak the proper words or show someone enough love, they'll open their eyes. However, some hearts are fixed in stone. Some folks are not sleeping. They intentionally fight the truth because it undermines their comfort, control, or delusions. And no matter how hard you try, you can't force the metamorphosis that only God can provide. That's why your purpose was never to repair the world. It was about giving everyone an opportunity. Every word you spoke, every warning you issued, and every minute you spent attempting to rouse them awake. That was not for your own happiness. It was so that when the time comes, when all they disregarded finally crumbles, they won't be able to claim, "I didn't realize." It is not your responsibility to make people listen. It's your responsibility to convey the message. Whether people accept or reject, it is up to them and God. Some things will change, some will not. Regardless, you completed your mission. So don't hang on to your disappointment. Don't shoulder the consequences of their choices. You were never sent to transform the world as you had thought. You were sent to ensure that there was no excuse when judgment arrived. Number 6, your pain was not for you. It was a message in flesh. Everything you experienced, the betrayals, rejection, solitude, and misery, was never only about you. It wasn't retribution, poor luck, or unforeseen suffering. It was a message. You were a living prophet, a warning in human form. God's chosen ones do not just speak truth. They become it. Before they open their lips, they carry the word in their own life, with their own traumas and tribulations. Their very existence serves as a message. People may disregard their remarks, but they cannot ignore the proof left on their life. That's why the assaults happened. That's why people turned against you. Why were you misunderstood? Why do doors shut that should have opened? Not because you were incorrect, but because your existence revealed what others preferred to keep concealed. You didn't only speak about the endurance you have. You didn't just warn of treachery. You went through it. You didn't only talk about rejection. You felt it directly. Your anguish was evidence. It demonstrated that what you stated was not simply theory. It was genuine, and those who saw were faced with a decision. Learn from your experience, or pretend they never saw it. Some will awaken as a result of your anguish. Others will disregard it until they experience it for themselves. Whatever the case may be, your suffering was not in vain. So don't think of your scars as merely wounds. They are proof that you conveyed the message. You were not sent to just warn people. You were sent to be the warning. And whether or not they listen, your life will serve as evidence that they had every opportunity to pay attentively. Number 7, your quiet now speaks louder than your presence ever did. People do not usually realize what they have until it is gone. They hear, yet do not listen. They see, but they don't comprehend. And then one day, you are no longer present. No more warnings. No more prayers. There is no longer presence. Holding everything together. That's when reality strikes. Your absence is not just a vanishing. It is a heavenly announcement. Those who disregarded you will begin to see the change. They took tranquility for granted. Gone. They were protected in ways they were unaware of. They rolled their eyes at the knowledge that I lifted. It now makes sense. This is the way God works. He eliminates his chosen ones not just to protect them, but also to wake up others who failed to listen when given the opportunity. Some will think and realize they have made a mistake. Others will try to find someone else to fill the vacuum. However, it will not be the same since you brought more than just knowledge and compassion. This was a heavenly task. Assignments cannot be changed for convenience. The stillness you leave behind will be more audible than any words you ever said, because they're no longer simply hearing what you say. They sense the absence of what you carried. And it is the true warning. If your presence was a sort of grace, your disappearance serves as a reminder that grace is limited. Those who ignored, ridiculed, or rejected you will have to accept the reality that they had access to something precious and heavenly and let it slip away. Number 8. Your task was a last assessment for people around you. Your presence in people's lives was never unplanned. It was a test. This is for them, not you. How they handled you, how they replied to you, whether they listened or turned you down. Everything was being recorded. Some assumed they were just dealing with another average individual. But in truth, they were dealing with a heavenly mandate. Throughout history, God has used individuals as warnings, opportunities, and second chances. However, the trend continues to replicate itself. They are ignored, abused, or assaulted. Jesus was shunned at his hometown. Prophets were scorned, insulted, and even executed. The globe has a history of failing these tests and paying the price later. Some of the individuals you met had the opportunity to realize who you were and position yourself properly. Instead, they spread rumors, questioned your credibility, and even worked against your interests. They had the chance to receive a blessing, but they chose to fail not because they didn't know better, but because they refused to acknowledge that God had put something valuable in front of them. The test is now finished. Their remark sealed their doom. They no longer have the opportunity to treat you well, to listen, or to pay attention. Some people will only later understand who you were and what you carried. However, realization does not remove the subsequent judgment. When God takes his chosen, it is more than merely a transfer. It's about giving up on those who refuse to see. The exam has been graded, the results are in, and they must now live with the choices they made. Number 9. The conflict is larger than you. Your removal is a tactical move. Your life is not only about you. Your goal is not only for personal pleasure or comfort. You're a part of a far larger spiritual war. And God doesn't move you at random. It is strategic. A soldier does not question why the general shifts them from one place to another. They do not question the tactics, timing, or directions. They believe in a larger plan, something greater than themselves. In the same manner, when God takes you from one location to another, it means your mission has changed. You could believe you're in the right position, doing the right things, and maintaining your ground. That is crucial. But God observes the battleground from above and understands the whole plan. And sometimes it entails relocating his chosen ones. When your duty is complete, when your presence in a certain location or season is no longer required, God transfers you on so that the fight might be fought in a new manner. It's difficult to grasp this while you're in the midst of it. You could feel abandoned, marginalized, or even rejected. However, your removal is part of a broader tactical play. God isn't just concerned with one conflict. He's staring at the whole conflict. And sometimes the greatest way to win is to move the pieces in ways we don't understand. Trusting in God's time and strategy requires a degree of confidence that isn't concerned with seeing the immediate outcome, but rather with knowing that his purpose extends beyond what we can understand in the present. He does not remove you because you failed. Your position has changed, and now the fight is moving ahead in a manner that is greater than you. Number 10. Some folks were only safe due of your presence. What many people don't understand is that your presence did more than merely provide comfort to those around you. It was a shield. God's favor fell on places, people, and circumstances as a result of you. You served as the covering. They did not deserve the grace they were unable to earn. Your existence was like a spiritual canopy, extending protection and kindness when it was not requested or even recognized. And during the time you were there, they were protected by the favor that God bestowed upon you. However, when your duty is over and God takes you away, that canopy is removed. The grace and safety they had mistakenly relied on no longer protects them. The repercussions that they evaded while you were there will now catch up with them. Whether it was a family that remained together, a successful business, or a thriving neighborhood, all of this was made possible by your being in the heart of it, surrounded by God's favor. The reality of your expulsion will strike you hard. The portion that they had no idea originated from you was the favor that seemed to follow them without explanation. Now they'll recognize it for what it was: borrowed, transient, and related to your presence. Some will attempt to use that protection after you are gone, but it'll be too late. The cover you offered was never theirs to retain. It was always the outcome of your obedience, trust, and assignment. For others, this will be a wake-up call, a brutal reminder that the grace they once took for granted has departed. And now they will have to face the repercussions of their decisions. And they will wonder, possibly too late, why they did not understand the significance of your presence sooner. Number 11. You were not a permanent fixture, but rather a transitory interruption. You were never intended to be a permanent fixture. God's chosen ones are carefully positioned, not to establish camp, but to cause disturbance. You were not sent to blend in or remain consistent. You were a transitory heavenly disruption, a wrecking ball meant to shake things up and start things rolling. And let's be honest, that type of fire does not last forever in the same area. If you had remained too long, if you had attempted to settle in, the fire would have died. And what was once a flame of truth and transformation would be reduced to a mound of cold ashes. God does not send his chosen to blend in. He sends them to agitate, whether it's a scenario, an attitude, or a group of individuals. You were put there to stir things up, to confront, to rouse, and to sometimes make others uncomfortable. That is the divine wrecking ball's job, to demolish what is not based on truth, to pull down what is not anchored in God's desire, and to shake people out of their complacency. However, the employment is never permanent. If you remained for too long, people would have stopped listening. The sting would have subsided. The task would have been forgotten. God's fire does not exist to be drowned in familiarity. It's designed to burn brilliantly, furiously, and with purpose. And when the time comes to move on, it does so before becoming monotonous. Your stay in that location was always transitory. Your presence was not intended to stay forever. You were sent to generate a commotion and then move on. And when you depart, the impact of your disruption lingers, leaving behind the very transformation that was required. Number 12. You weren't intended to view the harvest, only plant in hard soil. Success doesn't always look how we expect it to. Many people define success as seeing the fruits of their work manifest in tangible outcomes. But for you, success was not about reaping. It was about planting. You were summoned to the hard land, the spots where others could not go, the soil that was too dry or rocky for anybody else to labor there. Your objective was not to collect the produce, but to break through the stubborn, resistant ground, tilling dirt that appeared impossible to touch. It's easy to feel like your job was unfinished since you didn't see any progress, but your calling was never about tangible results. You were not supposed to remain long enough to watch the plants sprout or the crops mature. Your responsibility was to prepare the land for someone else. You were the one who opened hearts that had been locked for years, tearing down boundaries and circumstances that others felt were irreparable. Even if you did not see the results of your efforts, you placed seeds in soil that others would later care to. The fact is that not all seeds germinate immediately. Some take years to blossom, while others may never be seen in your lifetime. But it doesn't imply your labor wasn't worthwhile. You were cultivator, not harvester. Sometimes the most difficult task is one that no one sees. The silent, invisible effort of preparing for a harvest you may never witness firsthand. Your aim was never about quick satisfaction. It was about laying seeds where others were afraid to walk, hoping that someone else would come along and harvest the fruit. Number 13. Your departure represents the start of judgment, not the conclusion of your influence. When God dismisses his chosen, it is never a silent or unnoticed departure. It's a prophetic warning, a clear indication that things is going to change, but not in the manner people think. You weren't just a presence. You were the last call, the last warning. When God removes you from a circumstance or a location, it does not mean the end of your impact. It signifies the start of judgment. You were the final line of defense against what was coming. Consider it this way. Your time, it wasn't simply about speaking words. It was to prevent a cascade of repercussions, to intercede, to stand between God's vengeance and those who needed compassion while you were there. You could have felt like the voice no one listened to, the individual who was not respected, yet your presence calmed the tempest. Now that you've been eliminated, the storm is free to strike. The systems, people, and places that you impacted will now confront the consequences of their actions. This is not about punishing you. It is about others' responsibility, how they handled you, how they rejected your warnings, and how they ignored the message you sent. Everything has repercussions. Your departure is not the end of your legacy. It's time for them to account for how they handled what you presented. Those who insulted or abused you will now face the consequences of their reluctance to acknowledge the message. And for others, the awakening will come too late. When God moves his chosen, the resulting stillness is not peaceful. It is a forerunner to judgment. And for those who did not listen, your leaving will serve as a loud reminder that they had their opportunity. Your purpose was never intended to be glamorous. It wasn't about being recognized, fitting in, or obtaining favor from others around you. It was always about compliance. You received the call. You responded and carried out your mission. There was no need for acclaim or approval since your reward was never based on worldly acknowledgement. It was all about living your mission, no matter how difficult, lonely, or misunderstood it was. Now when it's time to depart, don't look back. What's done is done. Your task is complete. Nothing can alter it. You affected people's lives, sowed seeds, and uttered words. They are all accounted for. Your obedience was sufficient. Nobody can take away what God has written for you. You arrived and you obeyed. And now it is time to go. The effort you performed was not for you to see the results. It was to fulfill God's bigger purpose for you and others around you. Do not second-guess your travel or ponder whether it was worthwhile. You have been sent. You obeyed. And now you're leaving. Exactly how it was written. Your time here is ended, and the rest is in God's hands. Believe that the influence you created will continue to spread. Whether you realize it or not, you have done your part. And so, when you go, you may leave knowing you have served your mission. Everything was just how it should have been. If this message struck a chord with you, do not ignore it. Share it. Someone out there needs to hear this. Click the subscribe button to remain connected and avoid missing out on more amazing ideas like these. Like the video. If it touched a chord, please leave a comment to share your opinions. What parts of this resonated with you? Your voice is important, and it might be the reminder someone else needs. Don't forget to share the video. Maybe you have a friend or family member who needs a wake-up call, a new perspective, or a gentle reminder to recall. They are not alone in their trip. Share this with them to help them find out the truth. Let us keep the discussion going. Share the message and remind ourselves that we are all a part of something much greater. Your participation means the world. Let us keep going ahead together. Thank you for watching.